live. We are live.
Got it.
Well, hello again, everybody. Good evening here from chilly South Africa. Welcome back to Aquarius Rising Africa 2. And for those of you who haven't yet, please subscribe to our new channel, Aquarius Rising Africa 2. We were taken down a few weeks ago. I am being told in a lot of messages that you guys are battling to find us. And I know there's some kind of shadow banning going on around our channel at the moment. But please, that's why if you can just like this video, subscribe, and share. That's how we get out there again. That's how we get the algorithms up again. And that's how we get our amazing message out. And speaking of getting an amazing message out, I have back with me again our beautiful local lady, Amanda Bays, who is our SRA expert here in South Africa. We're very blessed to have her, and I'm sure thousands will attest to that as well. Hello, lovely Amanda. Welcome back. Happy Friday. How are you?
Very, very, very well. Thanks, Chantelle, and you.
Yeah, also good. We don't live too far from each other. We were just talking about how this chilly weather is setting in.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
I think we're in for a long, cold winter. Yeah. Anyway, we have each other to keep the laughter warm in any event. Yeah. So we shall continue to prevail.
Yeah.
I loved our interview with Elle the other day, by the way. Found it very, very interesting. The way she explained the splicing of the DNA. And I think it is so important for our viewers. And just by the way, for those viewers who haven't yet, that was a super interesting interview we did with Amanda Bays and Elle, I think maybe 10 days ago now. She's a high-level spliced DNA and part of the Hitler project, which we're going to be talking about now in these interviews. So for those of you who haven't watched that yet, please watch that interview we did with her. Really, really interesting. And we're going to be doing follow-up interviews with her as well over the next couple of weeks. So I think it's so perfectly timed that we're speaking with her. And we're going to be talking about the things, the NEPHILIM mothers, the Hitler project, that sort of thing with Amanda tonight as well. So no more babbling from me, you'll all be happy to hear. So I'm now going to hand you over to this precious lady. And what can you tell us tonight? Very interesting topic that we're going to be chatting about.
Yeah. I also would like to put this foundation in place so that the viewers will have a good background of understanding, but where do the NEPHILIM come from in the first place? If we don't have that background, then we get a bit lost, because you don't understand now why would there be NEPHILIM mothers today, and what is it all about today? So basically, that's what I want.
Sorry, what is a NEPHILIM? I mean,
I'm going to give you a good picture about that. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Wonderful.
then you can see what it's, what they look like. Where they come from and how it all works. So it's interesting stuff. We're going to look at a lot of pictures just to give you the background understanding, so it's going to help also the viewers to understand where Elle comes from, and how did she end up to be a NEPHILIM mother, and what does it mean today? So I know we're going to go right into the very first book of the Bible. That's the kickoff. But then we pull it through to today. So, we're just going to tie the ends. And so I just think it's good for us to get that understanding. So I'm going to share screen. Is that right?
Yeah, perfect. I've made you co-host.
Good. There it is. Okay. All right. So the first slide, of course, is the ministry where everybody can find any of the material and whatever they're interested in. And here we have Genesis 6, and it's about the giants. So, and then hybrids as well, which is very interesting to see how it all fits in. So we, those of you that are familiar with the Bible, I'm sure you've read Genesis, and that's where God already prophesied that there'll be two seeds that are going to oppose each other. So the whole Bible is about two seeds, two kingdoms, two opposing forces, the good and the evil, and that's basically what it is. So right in the beginning, God spoke in his word about the two seeds, which Genesis 3 verse 15. And this was after the Adam and Eve fell into sin, and God spoke the consequences over them. And he said, I will put enmity between you and the woman. And he's speaking to Satan. He's speaking to the serpent. And he's saying that there's going to be problems between the serpent and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. So it's between human, her offspring is human, but Satan's offspring is not human. But there's going to be a war through the ages. There's going to be a war, and especially nowadays, which we know that we're like at the end of time of this season. We are seeing a lot of stuff coming down. So where God continues to say that the one who is going to come will bruise the head of the serpent and tread on his head, and you will lie in wait and bruise his heel. Now, this is an interesting scripture, because when Jesus was crucified, and that, we commemorated this last weekend, the long weekend, which was Passover weekend, when he hung on the cross, every time he tried to lift himself up, because hanging on nails on your hands, it was through the wrist, the bones of the wrist that he was hanging, and also on his feet, you're just hanging on these three nails, then your lungs get pushed hard down, and then he would, to try and breathe, he would kick with his heels on the cross, which was rough. It was rough wood. And he would kick on his heels and try and lift himself up to take a breath. And by doing that, his heels were bloodied because of the continual pressure pushing up on the cross, trying to breathe. And that is exactly what God was saying here, is that you will lie in wait. So the serpent will lie in wait. They thought that they had killed Jesus, and then and bruise his heel. And so this is how he bruised the heel of Jesus. It's just interesting to know that it was prophesied way back. And so where do these giants come from? Let's have a look at if we see that prophecy, there's enmity between the seeds, the good and the evil. And now we see, where do these giants come from? Genesis 6, we go way back to Genesis 6, verse 1. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and the daughters were born unto them, and the sons of God, which are these fallen angels, the fallen angels were called the sons of God. They saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And so they looked through the woman, the daughters that were beautiful, and they picked whoever they wanted. So these are fallen angels. Fallen angels don't need a body. They don't need a body to manifest. They can take on any shape. So they can take on the shape of a human male. And that's why people said, but how can a fallen angel have sex with a woman? They can take on any shape, because they don't need a body to manifest. A demon on the other hand, does need a body, because that is a disembodied spirit. So a demon is a lower ranking, it's a lower class, but a fallen angel is higher rank. So they are the ones that fell with Lucifer. When Lucifer was kicked out of heaven, a third of the angels fell with him. He deceived them and they fell with him. And these are the guys we're talking about now, these sons of God, that the fallen angels that saw these beautiful girls and they picked whoever they wanted and had sex with them. So now they carry the seed of Satan. But the daughters carry the seed of the woman, human. And now we've got this mix going on. Okay. And then in verse 4, it says, and they were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. So because you've got a fallen angel that has intercourse with a human woman, now you are having the seed of Satan mixing with the seed of the woman, and now suddenly what pops out is a giant, because it's not normal. It's not normal to have a fallen angel that is a huge being that now comes in a male form, and they are beautiful as well. If these, we can ask Al to describe, what does a fallen angel look like? She could describe to us what they look like, and they're pretty handsome. So if they take on the shape, they look very Nordic, blonde, blue eyes, very Viking, big, strong guys. And then that's, of course, when they come in a human form. And so the sons of God, these fallen angels, came and they had intercourse with these beautiful girls, the daughters of men, and they gave them, they then bore children, and they became mighty men. So these are the giants, which were old men of renown. What? Okay, big shock. Because people that have never heard this is like, what are you saying? This is unbelievable. So the word sons of God refers to fallen angels, and they were the ones that fell. And I will bring in where I speak about the three heavens. The Bible speaks about three heavens. So you've got the first heaven, which is where when we look up, we can see the stars and the sun and the moon and the galaxies. We can see it's where we live. Then the second heaven is where Satan and his fallen angels, where they live. And then the third heaven is where God lives. So that's very clear in the scriptures, how you understand the hierarchy. And so the giants or the mighty men, these are called the NEPHILIM. So this is now the mix between
the offspring between the original women and the original fallen angels. Okay.
Yes, that's right. So there they are, these huge giants. You can just imagine what your heart would do if you see these guys coming along. And there's been
with the women at that stage. I mean, there must have been women giantesses. I think that's what you call them.
Women also came. It wasn't just men. They were also, in the beginning, they mainly referred to men.
Okay.
But there's also female, quite a lot of female Nephilim that are around as well. Okay. And they are bred for a specific purpose too.
Okay.
So yeah, we pick them up a lot when we counsel survivors. Okay, so what else was going on in Genesis 6? We're not stopping there. We're just going to have a look. And we see 6 verse 7 says, and the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast. Because what had happened, God had created this world perfect and beautiful. And he said, listen, I don't want you to mix seed. I don't want you to mix different seeds like animal and human. You don't do that. The seed of the animal stays with the animal and the seed of the human stays with the human. Don't mix it. And he was very clear on don't mix seed. But these fallen angels were very clever. And they wanted to come and destroy everything that God had put in place. They wanted to destroy the image of God. They wanted to destroy creation, male, female. They just wanted to destroy everything. And so they then came and taught mankind how to mix seed, how to make war, how to make weapons of war. And so they were very clued up. And mankind didn't know anything. And these fallen ones came and taught them, gave them lessons. And so God was pretty upset because this was his creation that's now being messed with. And he decided, look, we've got to destroy everything. We've got to destroy both man and beast and every creeping thing and the fowls of the air, because they had taken birds and everything, and they had mixed the seed. And so this, what we then got was these hybrids, what they called the Greek gods. And you know, we're going to look at some pictures now of the Greek gods. And they called it a Greek mythology, but it wasn't mythology. It was genuine because they were mixing the seed. And it was these strange monster-like creatures that came forth. And so the question is, why did the animals also have to be destroyed? And it's because there was the mixing of the seed. So the whole animal race was defiled, as well as the human race was defiled. And that is why God sent the flood of Noah was sent actually as an act of love. And he spared a family called Noah. And Noah and his family went into the ark. And it was interesting, if you read there, the Bible tells us that it's God that shut them in. It wasn't Noah that shut them in. It was God that closed that door. And that door stayed shut until the water started to subside. And so God saved a family because their DNA was not mixed. That's the only reason why God saved them, because they did not play around with the mixing of seed. But the rest, they had defiled their lineages. They'd brought in the whole mixed thing. Now it's interesting because after the flood, we still find giants. And if you think of David and Goliath was a giant. But what they say, okay, everybody's speculating. You know, everybody's thinking, okay, they've got different theories, but they're thinking that Noah's sons were clean, but Noah's daughter-in-laws that came onto the ark were mixed. And so the mixing continued. And that's why you have a watering down, and I'm going to show you the pictures now of the giants, that they kind of get smaller as it waters down, you know. So there was the corruption of the seed, the corruption of the DNA. And so the only family whose DNA was not corrupted was Noah and his sons. And now they're saying the daughter-in-laws brought in defilement. You know, I mean, they marry in. So that is very possible that could have happened. And so here we see these hybrids and what they call Greek mythology, but it's not a mythology, it is real. I mean, you know, you can see these creatures. There's the mermaid with all her stuff, and like half human, half fish, and that's a lion. And there's the whole Egyptian god with the eagle head, the falcon. And so all of these are just examples of Greek mythology, but it was hybrids. It was genuinely happening in those days. And they were terrifying, you know, I mean, to see them, so they worshiped them as gods. They worshiped them. And to this day, these same entities still have all the power because they've been worshipped all along. And now they're saying with the new age, they brought back the old gods of the new age, but it's old gods. it's not new. And the more ancient they are, the stronger they that, because they have all that worship. And so that's what's made them so strong. And now these guys, these dudes, are now controlling our survivors. They are tied up. We have survivors that shapeshift into mermaids. They are linked with these spirits. They shapeshift. You've got reptilians. I mean, you know the whole thing that's going on among the royals with the reptilian race.
Yeah.
And so this stuff is real. This stuff is, and these entities are real. And so when you program a survivor, you get them to call on these entities, and they become like a entity of power that gives them power when they need to fight. So they become one with these entities. Okay, then we see hybrids in the Bible, and this is in 2 Samuel. Now, this is quite long after the flood, and that's why I'm saying to you that there were giants after the flood. There were still giants, and the speculation is that Noah's daughter-in-laws brought this, the DNA, the mix of the DNA happened, you know, also with us. So 2 Samuel 23:20 speaks about a valiant man of Gebzeel, who had done many notable acts, slew 2 lion-like men of Moab. And there they are, lion-like men.
Yeah.
So here's the combination of where they mixed the seed of a lion with a human. And this was birthed. So when they, in the spirit realm, these guys are there. They are very strong. They are very powerful. They are warriors. So hybrids are very real. I mean, the Bible is showing us that they are very real entities. 2 lion-like men. Okay, so Matthew 24. Now we want to see, what about today? What does the New Testament say? We were right back in the Old Testament. Now let's go to the New Testament. And it says in Matthew 24, verse 37 and 38, but as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. So in other words, the closer we get to the second coming of the Lord Jesus, the more we're going to see this. We're going to see hybrids. We're going to see these monsters. We're going to see these creatures. They have bred these creatures. It is very well known that they have made these creatures in underground tunnels. And they have done a lot of work because Satan has got a deficit in his army. When he deceived the angels, only a third fell. So that means 2/3 are with God, on God's side, and only a third is with Satan. And so he's got a deficit, and he's got to try and make hybrids. So he then created this NEPHILIM project to get Nephilim mothers. So what he did was, someone like Elle and the other people that we work with, they have gone through a very special process where they have a 3rd strand DNA. You know, we only have 2 strands DNA, but for them, they have a 3rd strand, which enables them to fall pregnant with Satan's seed. So not everybody has that 3rd strand. So it's where the royals have been chosen. And they have been gone through a very special process in the creation of how they were created in an artificial womb, and everything that they did with them. They will then put this 3rd strand DNA. They give the girls this 3rd strand DNA, which then enables them.
Is that part of the splicing? Is that what I was talking about the other day as well? Would that 3rd strand of DNA therefore be part of the splicing process that they do?
Yes, it would be part of the ability. The splicing is also how they would take a human ovum And then they want other mothers to be added with their gifts and talents and abilities. So they strengthen the ovum. So it's not just one mother. They will then splice in other mothers that will be mother witches that will train them throughout their life. And so they will know by DNA recognition, they would know if a woman comes into their life and starts training them as a mother, but she's my mother, but she's a mother witch. And so when you look at the ovum, you're going to have the main ovum will be one mother, but then the other mothers are spliced in. And then they do a whole thing also with the men. So the mother would lie on an altar, and there will be 13 Nephilim on one side and 13 human on the other side. And she's in the middle. And then they have the Nephilim would do raping, and the male humans, the kings of the earth, because of course they're all kings of the earth, they are royal. And then they will do the raping, but they go from number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then number 13 goes again. And he's normally the very strong one. So there is a human behind every Nephilim. So you can see how they team up. So you will have a human king and a Nephilim. And so they stand, you know, the human is like representing the Nephilim is there, but the human also is like representing. So you have like a high council, and there's the 13 is always the high council.
Wow.
So this is how they would have done the Nephilim project. All right, so then it goes on to say, for as the days were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark. So they were carrying on life as normal. But why would the Bible say they were eating and drinking? I mean, that's a normal thing to do. That's how we stay alive. So the Bible is telling us something about what were they eating? What were they drinking? What's this marrying? What's this giving in marriage? There's more to just the words, because eating and drinking is part of being human. So now we're going to look at one of the books that was removed from the Bible that should actually be read with the Bible, and that is the book of Enoch. Enoch, number 1, is the Enoch 2 and 3 are not safe to follow, but Enoch book 1 is the authentic book. And so we're going to look at what is the book of Enoch. The Bible doesn't give us the detail here, doesn't fill in the dots, but the book of Enoch does. And so the eating and drinking, if we look at the original words, it means like crunching down on something. Eating and drinking, crunching down on something. This is more than just food. They were eating flesh and crunching the bones. So this is what the Bible is actually trying to tell us. And that's why God was so disgusted with mankind, because they were doing things that he'd forbidden. And here they are eating human beings. I mean, they're into cannibalism, because humans were the food for the Nephilim. The Nephilim would eat tremendous amounts of food, and they would eat humans. That was their diet. And so they were crunching down on bones. And that is what the book of Enoch tells us. So marriage, so there was forced marriage, where they were forced into marrying getting into these fallen angels and getting involved, making Nephilim babies. And so it was prearranged marriages, because they had to make covenants with these entities. And that's what Hitler did. By the time Hitler came around, he's got he's one of the spirits of the Antichrist. And so what he did was he organized to get all the ancient knowledge. He wanted ancient knowledge because he knew that there was power. And that's the power he tried to tap into. He wanted to control the world. And he knew that the Sumerians had some key. There was something that happened. And Genesis 6 has got keys. And he tried to tap into that. And that's what happened, because just after Hitler came around, and the whole Hitler project started with this third strand, something huge happened and went down in the spirit when 6 million Jews were murdered. So there was enough.
Absolutely, I would love to know more about that, and I hope you're going to enlighten us on that, because that was actually, to me, something that I've been wondering about for a long time. Almost feels like a mass sacrifice. I don't know.
Yes, it was. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, I mean, the Jews, because they're God's people, God's chosen people, and so many of them died, it was a mass sacrifice. And that gave enough power for the fallen angels to open the portal again, which God had shut. After the flood of Noah, God had shut the portal on Mount Hermon. If you go to Israel today and you go to Mount Hermon, which is up in the north, you will find there is Nimrod's castle. And it's a tremendously high place. It is a place where Jesus went, and it's the Mount of Transfiguration. Isn't that interesting? That was the Mount of Transfiguration, was Mount Hermon. And that's when Jesus said, you know, to Peter, on this rock, I will build my church. It wasn't on Peter, because that's what the Catholics have made it, that it was Peter. It wasn't on Peter. It was on his word, on what he spoke. And he said, you are the Christ. And he said, and then Jesus said, it's on that he's built his church, on what Peter had testified to, that Jesus is the Christ. He's the one that was to come. He's the Son of the Most High God. And so he went to the Mount of Transfiguration. And at the Mount of Transfiguration, if you go to Israel now, you can go there, and there's a god that they worship there called Pan, who's the goat god, who is the same as Baphomet. And so that's what they worshipped. And at that mountain, Jesus broke that thing. And at the mount, at that Mount of Transfiguration, and that is where you know, Moses appeared as well. And they said, oh, well, let us build a hut, you know, let's stay here. But the Lord said, no, you know, there's work to be done. And so he was doing a very powerful thing on the Mount of Transfiguration, which was Nimrod's castle. And the portal was shut, but it opened up in our time after all those Jews were killed. There was enough blood to open up that portal again. And when they opened up the portal, the fallen angels came through, and our generation of the Hitler Project was then birthed. And that's why—
That was 1944, right?
44, they started with it, yeah.
Wow.
Because the war ended in 45. So, you know, that's when it was all done. So that's when everything was put in place, because that portal was open. And now it's very dark. If you go there, it's very dark. You know, you can sense the darkness when you go there. So anyway, let's have a look at the book of Enoch, the missing books. And this is the books that can fill in the missing pieces for us, because the Bible doesn't give us all the detail, but this book, especially the book of Enoch, book 1, opens up a lot. And there's some very good translations that have been done by very reputable guys that haven't twisted anything. So the book of Enoch, we get to learn what were they eating and drinking, and who were they marrying. So we're getting a bit deeper in here so that we can understand what was going on. So it is the book of Enoch, which is book 1, chapter 7, verse 1 to 5. And we see, and they took wives for themselves. So we've just read that in the Bible. You know, we see the fallen angels took wives for themselves, and everyone chose for himself one each. And they began to go into them and were promiscuous with them. And so, of course, there was a whole lot of sex going on. And then we see, and they taught them charms and spells. Up until then, mankind knew nothing about witchcraft. They didn't know anything about the occult, but the fallen angels were pretty clued up. And so they were the ones that came and taught mankind all about charms and spells, and they showed them the cutting of roots and trees. In other words, the making of potions, you know, the whole thing with potions, where they do all sorts of witchcraft potions. And, you know, you drink this potion and it does things. So they taught them. This knowledge came from the fallen angels. And that the girls became pregnant and bore large giants. Now, this is word for word exactly what we read in the Bible. It's parallel. It just gives us what the fallen angels were teaching mankind. These devoured all the toil of men. And so everything man worked for, every field that they planted, everything that they worked for to put crops in the ground, these giants ate so much that they ate everything that mankind produced. So there was no food for man, because these giants were just taking over. And the giants then turned against the mankind, in order to devour them, because now men didn't produce enough. And so they decided, right, now we're going to eat man. And so, I mean, what chance do you have against the big giants? And then we see, and they began to sin against the birds and the animals, against the reptiles, and against the fish. So what sin? They started to have sex, and they started to mix the seed. Exactly the same as what we've just seen in the Bible. This book of Enoch is confirming. Now, they didn't just sin against mankind, but they started to use the animals that God had created. And they devoured one another's flesh and drank the blood from it. And so that is what they were crunching down on. That's what they were eating. They were crunching the bones of babies. And, you know, when I was teaching this, one of the survivors came and said, oh, it's absolutely horrific for her to hear, because she then had flashback memories of them having to eat little babies and crunch on the bones of the little babies. And that just brought it all back to her. It was very triggering. Wow. Okay, and then we see what a shock. I mean, come on, this is horrific. This is what was going on in those days, and even today again. And so we see the line of Esau, and we see that God was never pleased with Esau. He was this one that Jacob brought a sacrifice and Esau brought a sacrifice, but God accepted Jacob's sacrifice, which was from the work of his hands. But Esau, it was what he brought, what didn't please God. God wasn't pleased, but Jacob's heart was at the right place. Jacob grew up understanding God's heart, and he brought what God wanted, but Esau didn't. He married a Canaanite, which was, God said, don't intermarry, because the Canaanites had mixed their seed. And so Esau goes and marries a Canaanite. So now his DNA and his offspring are going to be mixed. And the Canaanites were part of the descendants of the giants. And so God wasn't pleased with Esau. Esau wasn't obedient when God spoke. So Enoch chapter 8, verse 2-4 says, and there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and became corrupt in all their ways. And so the book of Enoch is telling us how horrific life was on earth after the fallen angels had come and just mixed seed and messed with the animal kingdom, messed with mankind, and really just upset everything that God had made. And what we are seeing today is they are doing the same thing in our time with transhumanism. I'm going to get there. With transhumanism, transgender, everything trans, everything God put in place, that God gave order to, they have come to overthrow. They hate God with a passion. And so they're trying everything to upset whatever God put in place. And so here's some names of the fallen angels. Semjaza taught enchantments and root cuttings. So he was into the potions. Aramaros, the resolving of enchantments. I mean, mankind knew nothing, but these fallen ones came and taught them how to make these potions, how to make the magic, how to make these things work. And Baraquel taught astrology. Isn't that interesting? So he was the one that came and taught mankind about astrology. Kokobel, the constellations. Ezekiel, the knowledge of the clouds. Araquel, the signs of the earth. Shamsiel, the signs of the sun. And Sariel, the course of the moon. And so the mankind was now being trained and taught how these things work, how they can draw power when there's alignments of planets, when the orbits go round, how to prophesy into the sun and the moon and the stars and get it to speak over mankind, all negative stuff, to shut down businesses, to shut down the world. So they taught mankind a lot of stuff. And this is what Hitler was after. He wanted this knowledge because he knew there were secrets that wasn't around. And he actually hired 1,000 Tibetan monks to sit and chant in Berlin. Chant and chant because he was losing the war. And he wanted them to chant, to call up the entities and to commit all their black witchcraft, their black magic powers, to try and get him still to win and to take over the world. But of course, we know it didn't work. All right, and then we see King Og. This is interesting. The Bible speaks about this King Og of Bashan. And now I want to show you the pictures. Look at modern man, 6 foot tall. Then we have Goliath. He was only 10 foot. So we can see it's going down, down, down. The older, the giants, the more years, it waters down the genes. Then you've got the Irish giant. We went to Ireland and we went to the university and we saw this Irish giant standing. It's one of the diggings, they buried this, they found the diggings, the bones of this giant, the Irish giant in Ireland. And he's in the medical university. His bones are there. His skull is there. He is huge. I'm telling you, you feel like a little midget when you stand in front of this giant. And then you find King Og, and he is 15 foot tall. So he's as tall as a cedar tree. So you can just imagine how the Israelites felt when they went into the promised land and they were facing these giants and they said, we are mere grasshoppers. I think I would have felt like a flea, because they were huge. It's just to give you an idea.
I mean, 15 foot is very tall. I mean,
it's huge.
If you think 12 foot, it's the average male standing on top of each other. So you now have that plus an extra half of him on there.
Yeah.
I mean, and I mean, you can imagine bones are heavy, muscles are strong. So not only are they tall, but they've got very strong physiques that would match that height as well.
Yeah. And they eat a lot.
Yeah,
to
you can
keep that
imagine.
body going.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of crunching happening.
It was, this is very interesting. Have you ever seen anything on Tartaria?
No, Tartarus.
There's a whole lot of people actually at the moment who discovering lost the previous Earth, basically. And it's very interesting because more and more evidence to the stuff that I've been watching around that is showing that there was a giant civilization, because you can see when you're looking even now at some of the sacred sites and things, it's actually a massive tree, for example. And they show you when you're looking at all of that, that there was a giant civilization that literally destroyed the earth.
Wow.
And then and before that, all of the stuff, there's so much stuff that is proven how our previous ancestors understood completely how to harness energy naturally, using whatever they were using. I don't want to go into too much detail, but then how, when whoever took over from them, like the giants, and how they've destroyed all of that stuff that our previous ancestors were working with on the earth, our natural resources. And it was available to everyone, for example, how these guys have come and destroyed that and implemented their own systems, which are really inverted of everything. It inverts everything. It's crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's true. Okay, this is now very interesting. Watch. Just see how they flick again, from your skeleton. There they go. And so there again, you've got your 6-foot man at the bottom. He looks like a little midget. And then you go, the Caesar of Rome, that is an 8'6" man. And then you've got the 12-foot, which is Goliath. And then you've got this, the 15-foot is Turkey. So when they go and they actually dig the graves, Sardinia has got so many of these graves, and South America, they've also got the graves of the Nephilim.
Of the giants,
Of the giants, yes. And they've got skulls, and it's all photographed. So it's proof, and they looked at the DNA and they saw it was different. And it's elongated, it's the elongated heads as well, which we see in the Egyptians. Yeah. Okay, then you've got King Og, which is the guy that the Bible speaks about, 18-foot. And then you've got 19'6", which is overturned oak tree in the canton of Lucerne, which is Switzerland. And a 23-foot one in France. And 25'6" is also France. And then 36-foot, which is looks like France as well. So these graves can be found with these bones.
36-foot high, tall body. That is 6 average men standing on top of each other. Yeah. That is unbelievable.
Yeah, no, it's scary. It gives you an idea of why they said we are like grasshoppers. Even if you're 6 foot tall, you're quite tall in today's terms,
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine living with these guys. I mean, it must have been pretty scary. I don't know what I'd do if I see a giant run and scream. But what's interesting?
So big. Sorry, carry on.
Very interesting about the Nephilim is that they don't have any creativity.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That's why they want the humans. And they want to work with the humans, because the humans have got creativity, because we are made in God's image and God is creative. God created the world. He created everything. And because we're made in his image, we have creativity, but they don't, because they are not made in God's image.
Yeah, because
And
that creativity is sitting in our DNA, right? It's in our DNA.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so they don't have it. So they harness mankind. So they take the survivors and they use them as slaves because they need their creativity. Isn't that
Makes
interesting?
perfect sense, which is why they would find the human spirit so juicy and delicious and want to harness it and do their soul sculpting and adreno juicing.
That's
and
right. Yes.
all of this stuff. It makes sense because they need that in order for them to become creative. Insane.
And your survivors are super creative.
Yes.
They
and
do
super
poems.
smart.
They write poems, they draw, they can bake, they can cook, they can do any, they are so multi person that they are super duper with everything. It's amazing. And that's why these guys want it. And so if they want to create things in laboratories, they need the creativity of the survivor to help them.
It makes such perfect sense what you're saying. So again, it also just, we always speak about the fact that God is the creator. Lucy and friends are emulators. So they will emulate whatever the creator has created and then turn it into something very ugly. So nothing nothing is new. Everything is created in the image of God. What they've done is they've taken those energies, those frequencies, and they've corrupted them. And and how they've combined the frequencies energetically. And, they're obviously master alchemists as well. So they would know exactly. They've studied for years about all their lotions and potions and all these things they make, That's very interesting. Very, very interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so what is the hierarchy of fallen angels, Nephilim, and humans? So that we can just understand. So we have fallen angels. So they're in second heaven. That's their realm. That's where they operate, second heaven. And then we have Nephilim, which is now the second layer down. So your higher ranking, they've got the highest ranking army-wise, the fallen angels, then the Nephilim, and then the humans. Okay, so that's your Nephilim is half human, half fallen angel. So they still the seed of Satan. All they've taken from the human is the body, the meat box, the house. But the spirit inside is Satan's spirit. That's a Nephilim. All right, now I'm going to show you how it works. How are Nephilim created? Fallen angels sleep with the woman and impregnate them. And then they bring forth Nephilim. Does that make sense?
Totally. And then those would be the giants.
That's it.
That then took over and controlled.
In those days it was giants. Today, they have perfected them, that they look exactly like us. They look exactly like us. So they're not giants anymore because they've got to fool mankind and they've got to take positions of our society. They've got to be in media. They've got to be in education. They've got to be in every walk of life, medicine, everywhere. They are there and they look exactly human.
Wow. So yes, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. And I know there's been a lot of talk around our communities around Nephilim in the last year or two. People have been, especially like Jesse, and I know Bryce as well, has gone into it quite a bit. I was a little bit confused as to where they were because I was like, okay, so where are these giants now? They must have died out then. So it's interesting now that you've just said to me, that they've actually perfected them to look like the human being.
The Hitler project with the third DNA strand was so that they will give birth. Now they're only pregnant 4 months. So they're not 9 months pregnant and they grow very, very quickly. So they will, the young lady will give birth to the first Nephilim at the age of 12, 13. She gives birth to her first Nephilim. And
now, who impregnates her? Is there a specific sperm donor?
A fallen angel.
So it would be a fallen angel that would then either through rape or artificial insemination would then impregnate her.
It's rape. They've got the royals get raped by Satan himself. And they if they explain it to you, they don't have words to tell you what it's like. It's like you disintegrate as a human being completely. Your cells, it's like you explode. That's what happens when Satan impregnates you. Because remember that the hybrids, that the Nephilim is his seed.
Yes.
And so you will have a fallen angel that gets assigned when the sperm and the ovum come together, when they decide they want this baby. And who's the sperm donor and who's the ovum, and how they're going to who's the blueprint plan. This baby has to become a nurse, in medical, whatever, or a doctor, because we need to use them to do programming, and we need doctors to do the programming because they know how to resuscitate them and do all sorts of things. So they will determine their career. That, like I said, I think we spoke about it with Al when I was sharing that, you go into a direction and you can become even a therapist. Yeah. But you are a program therapist. So any person coming to you that wants deprogramming, that wants to get out of the system, they will just put you deeper back. They'll program you deeper. That's their job. Yeah, exactly. So what happens is that this girl, when they plan them, there is a fallen angel assigned over that child. And then when that child is, when she gets, that fallen angel watches over her the whole time. So when she becomes 12, 13, and she goes through a ritual where she then says the 5 I wills of Satan. She identifies completely with Satan. And then when then the impregnation takes place and she gives birth to her first Nephilim son. But what has happened is the fallen angel has now become flesh. Yeah. And it's the whole Babylon story of Semiramis that gets pregnant with her son, Nimrod, Tammuz, and she births. So every survivor, royal survivor, becomes a Mary who gives birth to a savior who's a Nephilim. Wow. Same story. Copycat, same story. Wow. And wow. That fallen angel enters her and becomes the baby. Yes, exactly. And then when she gives birth to him, it's her first son that she gives birth to. And then he grows up. Okay, she's pregnant 4 months. So that means she looks like at school, she's putting on weight. She's just putting on weight. But she's not full term. I mean, not full belly pregnant. They take that baby out, and he then gets raised in a Nephilim creche, and he grows up very quickly. So then she's 12, 13. By the time she's 26, he's a full-grown man, and she marries him. Wow. So then he becomes her husband. So she's a mother at 13 and a wife at 26 to the same fallen angel who's now a Nephilim. That's just gross. It is gross. It's very gross. And that Nephilim controls her every moment of her life. She has sex with him every single day. She gets totally addicted to sex. Totally addicted. And to break that addiction is very difficult because the level of sex, the ecstasy that he gives, no human man can give it. So she's totally addicted. And we had this one girl that would go to the toilet like 8 to 10 to 12 times a day and masturbate. And when she masturbates, he's there, he's with her, and he takes that energy. And she thought it's normal. She thought everybody does it. She didn't know it's not normal. But that's the addiction. That's how strong they've made these women addicted to them. And to break that is, I've sat in deliverance. I'm telling you, it's quite hectic to get to break.
I can imagine it must be a crazy. So this Nephilim can actually shapeshift himself into human form as well.
He's human. Remember, he's a Nephilim. Yeah. He's in a human body. He's human.
Yes. Okay.
I'm gonna show you some lookalikes. Not today, but when we carry on, I'm going to show you some photographs of lookalikes of Nephilim, of what they look like. And you can see they are pretty human, pretty normal.
Wow. So what you're saying actually is that Nephilim walk amongst us in a very human meat suit, and we actually wouldn't know the difference between them and our fellow brethren.
That's right.
Whereas 100 or 200 years ago, we might have seen a giant. Now we're seeing a normal. Now we're seeing a normal human. And are these women aware that they are marrying the Nephilim?
Look, parts of them are, but the presenter, because they built these thick walls in their mind.
Yes, the DRD,
and the whole DRD thing. So that they would put polar opposites. So there will be this one part that goes to church, believes they're a Christian, all the good things. But then on the back burner, there are cult aligned parts that are very active. And to try and break the addiction with that Nephilim, he's her husband. She loves him. He gives her gifts. So it is very hard for her to, we ask God to show her, what does he really look like? And then she gets a shock.
Because he's obviously, his spirit must be very ugly. And
very ugly.
Compared to the physical body, because I'm sure he would then take on quite an attractive shape.
Absolutely.
Unless your name is Klaus Schwab, I'm sorry, there's nothing attractive about that man. I think that's what a Nephilim looks like. Like Klaus.
Yeah, but they really, this is one of the toughest. And normally we only break this like at the end, because they are so connected with this Nephilim. It is unbelievable, because that's all they've known. That's all they've known is this addiction.
This is so interesting, and I'm really loving the information you're giving us around this. It's amazing.
That's good. I hope it helps.
Yeah.
Okay, so now what about today? What is going on today? We need to understand, as in the days of Noah. And so this is then the scriptures, Luke 17:26 and Matthew 24:37. And when the disciples sat with Jesus and they said, how will we know? When is it the last days? And he said, and just as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the time of the Son of Man. And I think with the background that we understand now, we can see things happening around us and understand this must be coming to the end very soon.
I was actually going to say to you, I wanted to ask you your opinion, because isn't that, with this whole, like when we're going back just to the beginning of time and the fallen angels and the infusing of the DNA. Isn't this interesting? Because it sounds very much on a similar level, except now where we're at, there's a lot more advanced technology that they're playing with. But it's almost like a similar thing now, you know, with this zab, zibbity do that you know, and interesting. I mean, I wouldn't mind at that, you know, since we're on the topic, on the whole thing about the snake DNA. You must have heard about this whole thing.
Yeah.
I'd be interested just to know, especially since we're talking about this, and you know that the snake sort of represents the original serpent, the Adam and Eve, and obviously Satan as well. Well, I mean, in Africa, you look at all the African, I can't say all, but many that I know, the African religions and stuff, the snake god is the representation of Lucifer. And that's why a lot of African people are so terrified of swimming. I didn't know that until recently. I was speaking to my nanny, actually, and she told me that. And and of course, the snake god. So there's this whole snake thing. And obviously the organs. It's not just that they're trying to infuse it into the DNA or trying to, you know, get it in, but it's more like the venom, the effect it has on the people, and the effect that people are having, as well as I'd be interested to know about that. What is your opinion on that, since we are on that topic?
I do believe that there is deception, and I think that's been proved, you know, with this world courts, the court cases going on, and so there was definitely deception, and a lot of lies that was told about it. The truth was not, you know, given. And now that if people actually die, their insurance won't pay out, and they say no, they see it as suicide because you made the choice. But I mean, that's not what we were told. We were told you've got to. You were told it's mandatory. So that's no choice. Now they're saying if you die, you know, from it, then your insurance is not going to pay out. So I mean, how fair is that? That's deception. That's absolutely lies. You know, absolutely. So, and so we're back with the garden and the serpent, you know, the serpent in the garden, and that's where we are. So it's just
interesting, very interesting.
Just pretty sad that we've got this far. But I mean, it was prophesied that this is what's going to happen, you know, so. All right. So is there any evidence in end time prophecies about in our days, today, in the days of Noah? Yes, there's an important clue that is given in the book of Daniel that explains the statue that this King Nebuchadnezzar, who was not a believer, he had this dream and he saw this image. And this is the image that he saw, where there were different time periods. And so you see the first one with the head of gold was Babylon. So that was the first empire, that was Babylon. The next one was silver, and that's Medo-Persia. The next one was Greece. Interesting. Just look where Greece points to, the loins, where the seed is. And even to this day, the gods of Greece are still all over the place. You know, they very much still going in our midst. So that's the multiplication of the seed that's spread all over. And then you've got the iron, which is Rome. And then you've got the feet of clay and iron, which is Europe. Isn't that interesting? So this was the image that Daniel saw. And it's interesting when you listen to him, God tells him, I'm showing you things, but keep it locked up, sealed until the end times. And so there are seals of Daniel opening up in our day. And we're starting to understand things that we didn't understand before. Makes a lot of sense. So the feet refer to NEPHILIM and human. Clay is human and iron is the Nephilim.
Okay.
The Rome was very much Nephilim nations. It was still from the Nephilim nations. Okay, so we see Daniel 2 verse 43 says, and whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. So here it comes, the mixture. So Daniel even saw it. And he saw that the fallen angels are going to come and mix themselves with the seed of men. But they cannot cleave because they cannot become one. We can't become one with the Nephilim because they are from the seed of Satan and we are from the seed of the woman. You know, so that we can't mix with them. You know, that when the fallen angels mix with a woman, then what comes out is the body of a human, but the spirit of Satan, the seed of Satan. Okay, so then is there any evidence in our time? And we see that there's increased supernatural activity. So they're seeing more and more UFOs. They're seeing a lot more stuff. People are being picked up by UFOs, motherships. They're being taken, sex experiments are being done on them. They are harvesting their eggs. They are doing major medical experiments with these people. When you listen to the interviews, it's quite scary what they've been subjected to, which is the whole mingling of the seed. So they will take the seed from the woman and even harvest men, you know, the sperm of men, and then play around with animal, play around and see what monster will come forth. And so in underground tunnels, in underground bases, there are these monsters in cages. And people have been in there and they've seen them.
Yeah, they have.
And so transhumanism is rife. It's where they take super soldiers and say they want them to have very good eyesight. They will splice them in with a cheetah. And I don't know if you know, but a cheetah's eyesight can see 4 kilometers, sharp, clear. The speed that they run. A cheetah is amazing, absolutely an amazing animal. And so what they've done is they've spliced in animal with human, and they've given them super duper night sight. They've given them speed that is not normal. And they've just mixed man with animal or man and machine. And so they've given them bionic legs. And they just not human anymore. And so you've got super soldiers that, you know, your spy work, like James Bond, is the old-fashioned way of spying. And they have these watches, you know, that are actually recorders. And you know, all that stuff. That's old stuff. That's old technology. But today, they remote view. They've got very high intelligence, so they can scan things, you know, just they remote view. So it's not astral, they actually remote view into the enemy's camp, go into their files, get what they want, and come back and give it to their bosses, their generals, whoever. And so it's a different level ball game completely because of technology. So it's so technology what we're dealing with. And it is at such a level. It is really
I do believe that. Yeah.
Singularity, GMO foods, you know, and we're eating this and we're wondering why there is such an increase of cancer.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, you know, in India, I don't know if I shared this with you, but in India, I've got clips where the farmers that would supply food to the masses, the companies that make the GMO seed came there and said to them, listen, take our seed. Our seed is better. You're not going to have the different bugs that get into that seed. Our seed will not be attacked. So give us your organic seed, Genesis seed that God made, and you take our seed, which is now genetically modified, and you'll see you'll have better crops. So the first year they got a bit of a crop. The second year it was less. The third year there was nothing. And they started to commit suicide. 30,000 farmers committed suicide. That's sacrifice. That's sacrifice. You know, just because of this GM seed. I mean, we should go back to Genesis and get the original seed, because that's where the food is. And so you get seedless grapes, you get seedless watermelons, you get seedless. There's no seed to reproduce.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's not God's food, because God said his seed would be in the fruit. And that is what makes the next generation.
Exactly.
And so you have humans that have a low seed count now. So the woman can't fall pregnant because we're drinking wrong water and we're eating this wrong food.
Yeah.
And, you know, so we're having cancers and all sorts of problems because it's done on purpose.
Yeah,
it's done on purpose to make us sick.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so how have we been infected by these fallen angel genes? This is quite an eye-opener. Can you count how many toes do we have here?
Jeez.
So if you see somebody that's got 6 toes and 6 fingers, the next one, 6 fingers, you're dealing with a giant bloodline.
Wow.
And we have ministered to families that have the 6 fingers. They could have here on the side, they have an extra little finger or a toe on the foot, an extra little toe that comes out. Number 6 comes out. And what they do is the baby is just born and they'll nip it off so that they'll only have 5, but they can be the number 6, which shows you that there's been a mix of the genes.
Yeah. Wow.
So those families suffer spiritually quite a lot. There's quite a lot of baggage on them, on the families. So this is also very interesting. There's an X-ray of the 6 fingers. Do you know that the Queen Victoria, just go and Google and see who had, of the royals, who had 6 fingers? Pretty interesting.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. All right. So Hollywood and pop culture, as in the days of Noah. So this is the mixing of the seed. And Avatar. This was a mix. And these are the movies. I mean, this is what we're watching. So Hollywood knows more about this than what we do.
Of course.
They clued up. They know.
Hollywood is probably the main outlet, because they've got to tell us all the time what they're doing anyway through their movies, don't they?
Yeah.
So Hollywood would be
is on the cutting edge. Yeah. So there's really a dark agenda with Hollywood, because they get into your homes, they can mess with our minds, you know, they can expose us to all this stuff. They've got our children, you know how they've messed up our children with all the computer games and things.
Yeah.
So we've got these gods, you know, Thor, he's got a hammer. There's his hammer. And if that spirit, many times when we pray for people and they get cracking headaches, it's Thor that's hit them in the spirit on the head, and they have splitting headaches. So these entities are pretty real. They are really manifesting in our world. X-Men with their wings. We've got some survivors that do the shape-shifting. And the one girl was telling us she suddenly felt something going on with her back, you know, it's like pain in her shoulders. And the next thing was pop. And she looked, and yeah, these wings were. So they had worked with her since she was a baby to be able to shapeshift like this. All right, splice. There we've got the mouse with the human. So, I mean, these movies have been going for how long already? That they know that this is happening. They're splicing.
Yeah, they're telling us all the time. They normalize it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So there you've got the wings in. But we are not to fear. The whole thing is, even if you see this, it's fascinating, but also some people can be very fearful. And the whole thing is, we're not to fear. We've got to put on our helmet of salvation. Just cover your head so that you know that our Father is in control. No matter what is going on in the world, God is still on the throne. He knows exactly what's going on here. He knew it in Genesis. He already put everything in place that we need for the end times. He's not suddenly in a panic, oh boy, what am I going to do now? No, he's known about this all the time. And so our Father is in control, and he's at work with his awesome plan of redemption. And he wins in the end. So the survivors get pretty upset. Well, there are parts that are still cult aligned when I tell them, listen, you guys are serving a loser. You must read the end of the book, because we win. So join the winning team, stop serving a loser. They get pretty upset with me. So our hope must be in Jesus. I mean, that's the only hope that we have. This is the Lord's day. It's not Satan's big day. It's God's day. He couldn't wait for this day. It's his finest hour, not the enemy's. And that's what we need to see. He's coming on a white horse. He's coming victorious. He's coming as the conquering king. And he's coming to take back the world that he created. And he's going to deal with all these entities and all these things. And so I trust that has given you some background.
Amen. That's been amazing. Wow. As always, I've really enjoyed that. Wow. Very insightful. Thank you so much. I look like a bit, it's been amazing. Thank you so much, Amanda. Really, really incredible. Yeah. I love the way you break it down. It's simple. It's easy now to understand. And I think, as I always say, knowledge is power. And I think for us to have the knowledge and understand what's going on is a very, very, very important thing.
Yeah. And I think if you listen to a survivor's testimony now, it'll make a lot more sense.
A lot more sense. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, lovely lady. And I look forward to, we will speak later on this week with Elle again. And we'll have a follow-up interview, and you and I will have another individual again. We will arrange the time and the date and set it all up. Yes. So thank you, Amanda, so much. Is there anything in closing you'd just like to say or share with our audience?
Yeah, I think, it's just to keep your eyes open and be aware, and things that you see on movies. Don't think this guy's got one huge imagination. This stuff is very real.
Absolutely.
And, so just be awake and alert, and there's no reason to fear. If you know God and he's with you, he won't leave us. And he has the final word. So it's just a word of encouragement. In spite of all this darkness and all this stuff, Satan's not going to win. So he's trying pretty hard.
It's just a matter of time. We understand it. We just got to get through it. We are the ones that we ourselves have to stand up, and we've got to awaken. We've got to shine our light. And that only comes through understanding, compassion, love, and understanding what's going on, and not turning a blind eye and running off into the hills and pretending things aren't going down, because they are.
They are. It's true.
Okay, guys and girls, I want to say thank you so much, Amanda, for being with us again. And to our audience, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please give us a like, a share, a subscribe, leave us a comment, and share, please. This is such important information to get out there. And I think I've already asked you, but if you haven't already, please give us a like and a subscribe to our new channel. Really appreciate you being here. Happy weekend. It's Friday night here for us. God bless you all. Take good care of you. And we shall see you very soon. I'll see you tomorrow night with David Zublik.